Welcome to this explainer. Whenever we hear the name 3M, our minds usually jump straight to the office supply closet, right? We think of tape, we think of sticky stuff, we think of those everyday consumer goods that quietly hold our lives together. But if you look closely at the data and the actual corporate history of this company, you realize something profound. 3M doesn't just make tape. Above all else, they build innovators. So today, we're going to unpack the incredible corporate strategy behind one of the most inventive companies in the world. We're looking at exactly how a culture of permission creates billion-dollar products. And as you'll see, it's not by chance. It's by deliberate architectural design. Picture a laboratory. A scientist is working diligently to create something incredibly strong, something permanent, an adhesive that'll hold heavy things together forever. But the experiment just doesn't work. The result is this exceptionally weak adhesive. It barely sticks at all. It just lifts right back off with almost zero effort. Now, in almost any other corporate environment on Earth, this is the exact moment where the project gets permanently scrapped. The beaker is washed out, the failure is buried in a filing cabinet, and it is literally never spoken of again. But not here. So how exactly does a completely failed adhesive end up changing the entire world?
Section 1. The Post-it Note Miracle.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because that failed adhesive definitely did not end up in the trash. It ended up on almost every desk, refrigerator, and monitor on the planet. We're talking, of course, about the Post-it note. It is universally recognized, sure, but the actual mechanics behind its creation are widely misunderstood. See, this wasn't some lightning strike of genius where an executive suddenly demanded a temporary sticky note. No way. It started way back in 1968. A scientist named Spencer Silver was trying to create that super strong adhesive we just talked about, but ended up with one that barely stuck. And for years, it was essentially a solution looking for a problem. It actually wasn't until another employee, Art Fry, realized this quote-unquote weak adhesive was absolutely perfect for keeping bookmarks from falling out of his choir hymnal without tearing the pages. That's when the idea finally clicked. Because of 3M's really unique environment, Spencer Silver's initial failure wasn't hidden away out of shame. It was allowed to exist, it was openly discussed among colleagues, and eventually, it flourished into a global icon and a multi-billion-dollar product. But to truly understand how an accident becomes an icon, we have to pull the camera back. We need to look at the exact environment that allowed this mistake to breathe in the first place.
Section 2. Embracing permissive failure.
Now, that environment that allowed the Post-it to actually thrive is what we call a culture of permission. This is where the magic really happens. And what's incredibly interesting about this is how 3M literally turns a philosophical concept into tangible corporate action. Just look at the progression. Step 1, experiment. Okay, that's pretty standard across all research and development departments. Step 2, fail. Again, highly standard. True science is absolutely full of failure. But look at step 3, reward. 3M actually rewards scientists for experiments that do not work. Think about how radical that is for a second. In the traditional corporate structure, failure is punished, or at the very least, frowned upon as a massive waste of time and shareholder money. But 3M fundamentally understands something absolutely crucial. If you penalize failure, you penalize risk. And if you penalize risk, you utterly destroy innovation. So by rewarding the failures, they completely remove the fear. They're telling their innovators to push the absolute boundaries, knowing that even if they fall short, the attempt itself is still highly valued. That is permissive failure in action.
Section 3. The famous 15% rule.
So how do you institutionalize a culture of permission, right? How do you make sure people actually have the time to experiment and potentially fail without falling completely behind on their day jobs? Well, you have to build it into their schedules. You mandate it. 15%. Let that number hang in the air for a second. 3M pioneered a corporate policy of giving their employees 15% of their paid working time to pursue entirely independent projects. That is almost a full day out of every single work week where employees aren't working on their officially assigned tasks. They aren't answering to their direct managers about daily deliverables. Instead, they are given the freedom, the laboratory space, and the financial backing to just explore. And this dedicated 15% of time fuels what are known as skunkworks projects. If you haven't heard the term, these are independent, sometimes even entirely secret projects pursued by employees completely outside the normal chain of command. The sole purpose? To drive innovation. When you give your brightest minds dedicated, uninterrupted time to tinker, to play, and to thoroughly test out their wildest ideas without the crushing pressure of immediate commercial viability, you are essentially planting seeds. Now, you don't necessarily know which one of those seeds is going to grow into the next Post-it note, but the 15% rule ensures that the soil is always incredibly fertile.
Section 4. The dual career ladder.
But time and permission?
those are really only two pieces of the puzzle. You also have to entirely rethink human ambition. You have to reimagine how you reward success over the course of a person's entire career. Notice the traditional corporate path. In most companies, if you're a brilliant scientist or engineer and you create something amazing, how are you rewarded? Well, you get promoted. And what does a promotion mean in the corporate world? It usually means you're forced right into a management role. You're taken out of the lab, away from the test tubes and microscopes, and put behind a desk to manage budgets, personnel, and spreadsheets. Basically, the ultimate reward for being a great innovator is that you are no longer allowed to innovate. Now look at 3M's dual ladder. This brilliantly illustrates how they completely reimagined the path for their top talent. They created a parallel system where you can climb the corporate ladder, significantly increase your salary, gain immense prestige, and become a senior executive, all while remaining a working scientist. They deliberately keep their best innovators right there in the lab. They recognize that managing people and inventing revolutionary products are two entirely different skill sets, and they absolutely refuse to punish their best inventors by forcing them out of their element.
So, what does this all mean? The crucial point is this: innovation is not an accident, it is an architecture. When we look at a product like the Post-it note, it is so incredibly easy to just see a lucky break, right? Just a happy, random accident with a failed adhesive. But as we've unpacked in this explainer today, that accident was caught in a carefully constructed safety net. The 15% rule gave Spencer Silver and Art Fry the actual time to play with a failed adhesive. The culture of permissive failure ensured that the mistake was celebrated rather than hidden away in shame. And the dual career ladder ensured that the brilliant minds working on these unique problems were exactly where they belonged, in the lab, doing exactly what they do best. Billion-dollar products don't just happen out of nowhere. They are the direct result of deliberate, meticulously designed corporate policies.
And this brings us to a critical reflection point for all of us, no matter what industry or field we work in. If the world's most innovative companies are built on the firm foundation of embracing and rewarding things that don't work, how do you handle failed experiments in your own workspace? Do you hide them, or do you leverage them to change the world? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.